Okay, so our activity is giving us a content main like it was before, and then a fragment main. And the fragment main is going to be where we actually put the code. So if we open this guy up by double-clicking on it, it's going to give you this render problems thing. Don't worry about that initially. It should go away after a second, because Gradle is going to download the dependencies, it's going to build it, and then that should go away, but you can dismiss it. I don't even know what that says, but let's open up the text or the code, and you can see, okay, it just has a hello world text view in there. So this is a activity main that contains a content main, which contains a fragment main. So there's 3 views in there, or layouts nested within one another. But we are not going to worry about that because we're actually not going to display anything at the moment in our main activity. But what we are going to do is we're going to create that intent, that camera intent, and then we're going to launch the camera. Let me open up Genymotion in the meantime while that's launching, because that takes usually a second. Oh, yeah. I hate splash screens that can't go low. Okay, so if you remember, just creating an intent. So intent, use the wireless here, intent, and I'm going to call this camera intent. You can name it whatever you want. I just like to be a little bit more explicit. It's asking me, do you mean Android content intent? Yes, so I'm going to hit Option Enter to import that automatically. And then I'm going to call new intent, just like we did in the past. And so now again, instead of passing it the context, which is usually just main activity.this or this, we're just going to pass it a constant. So media store is the class that we're using. Dot, and we can see all the different actions that we have in here. Action underscore, I guess it doesn't filter out the other ones, but you can see at the top 3 results, action image capture, action image capture secure, you can guess what that means, and then action video capture. So again, you can take video. It's pretty much the same process, just a different file format. So we're going to do image capture, and that is all we have to do for the intent. And again, it's an implicit intent, so that's all we have to pass to it. I'm going to do something first. So I talked about passing into the extras bundle the URL or the URI to save the image to, but I'm going to ignore that for right now, and I'm just going to call start activity for result. Yes, start activity for result. I don't know why that didn't come up. Okay, and then camera intent, pass it the camera intent, and then I'm going to pass it the, I'm just going to put in 0 for now. You can pass in, there's a constant that you can pass in for the camera if you want. If you want to differentiate between another intent or activity that you're calling, you can give this a number 10, and that way you know that the camera, when this returns, is 10. So let me just do that. Let me just put in 10, so just to show you where that is. Okay, so we're going to do that, and well, let's just launch this to see. I don't have any. Let me open Genymotion. Hopefully this just works. I restarted my computer before I got here, so hopefully everything's fresh and working. Okay, that's good news. Okay, so give this a second to launch. Okay, so now that that's up, we can switch back to Android Studio. There it is on our list. I'm going to just say, yes, use the same device for future launches. That way I don't have to keep looking at this launch window. It'll just put it on my device automatically. So what this is going to do is it's going to launch our app and immediately launch our camera. And let's see how this works. Should be compiling, and there it goes. Okay, so this is cool. This is our camera. This is, again, it launched immediately. There was no interaction. We have our button here that we can take a photo. We can flip the camera around using this button, or we can cancel. So I kind of mentioned that functionality before. But in Genymotion, what we can do is we can hit this little button here in the top right for the camera, and I can turn this on, and point this down so you don't have to look at me. So I selected the webcam 0. Let's see what the preview is. I might have to restart this app. Yeah, let me go ahead and restart the app. Or maybe I have to restart Genymotion. Let's go ahead and do that. I know there's a little trick to it if it doesn't work the first time. It always does this. I've upgraded Genymotion. I haven't updated this simulator, so maybe it's a simulator thing. Okay, let's recompile that, so that's waiting to launch when we get to here. Okay, says it's running. Okay, let me try one more thing. Hit cancel. Oh, okay. When I hit cancel, it goes back to the onCreate method and launches the intent again, so I actually can't get rid of that. But what I can do is hit the home button, kill that for now. Okay, I'm going to restart Genymotion, but before I launch the app, I'm going to turn the camera on. I think that's what I have to do. Yeah, for some reason when you restart Genymotion, it turns all these things off. Okay, let's do the preview. Change it to webcam. There we go. Okay. Now we'll keep the back-facing camera for the demo here. So unlock that, go back to Android Studio, launch that. Okay, so it launched the camera intent, but if we flip this around, that's the front camera, and the back camera. Yeah, it's not letting me flip it. Oh, okay. I probably have to set that as a feature, but let me just set both of them to this one. Okay, so there we go. So now what we can do is we can take a photo with that. Now we can retake the photo. So I'm moving around right now, and obviously the image is not moving because I've taken the photo. Now I can hit done to save it. I've saved it, but I haven't really done anything with it. So let me close that. Oh, well, it's not a very useful app because I didn't put any logic in here to actually handle that. So let's now refactor our application to extract this this logic to launch the intent. So every time I go back to my main intent, because of that I have that destroy activity on, it's the background activity or main activity is getting destroyed. So this onCreate always gets called, and so it always launches the intent. I kill the intent, goes back to the onCreate, etc., etc. So that's what's happening. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to highlight this code. We're going to right-click on this. If I can right-click on the code, you gotta make sure it turns into an arrow, not a cursor. So right-click on it. Oop. Come on. Okay, I don't know why it's not right-clicking. Go down to, when this context menu comes up, go down to Refactor. Go to Extract, and then go to Method. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this code and put it in its own method, because we're going to put this method in as a click handler. And it's going to ask us a name, and we can keep it private because this is going to be just for the class itself. So I'm just going to call it launch camera intent. And of course you can keep this code in the click handler. I just want to show you this refactoring function in Android Studio. And so what that did is that replaced the code that I had highlighted with a method call, and then created the declaration for me. It's a private void. It doesn't return anything. and then it puts my code in there. Well, I could have done that by hand, but the really cool thing about Android Studio and this feature, it's actually in all of JetBrains, who makes the Android Studio IDE, along with IntelliJ and WebStorm and PHP Storm and PyCharm and all these different IDEs. If that code relied on a variable that was declared up above, it would actually automatically pass that in as a parameter to your method, and then if other code was reliant upon the result of this, it would figure out the return on that. And so it handles all that. It's really, really beautiful. So try this out on your own code, and it's really, really cool. So again, if you're calling this intent or this code a lot of times, you might want to pull it out into a method or its own function. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that. So now that we have that, I'm going to wrap this in a on-click handler. But before I do that, I'm going to go to my fragment main, go back to the design view. I'm going to close this debug window because I don't have a lot of screen. I'm going to go to enter presentation mode, get a little bit more screen real estate. Oh, gee, I don't know. It always does that. We don't need that. Okay, yeah, I don't know why I switched windows like that. Okay, so for my fragment here, this is just a for this one. Okay, let me really. That's interesting. Okay, I just want to see what was in those other views. So it says one or more layouts are missing. I'm just going to say automatically add. I don't know, I can read that. I'm not going to waste time here. Okay, so it just rebuilt it for me. So we can click on this top right-hand menu to select the text view. And we're going to remove that by hitting the delete key. And I'm going to find it here. But in our list of widgets, there is an image view. There it is. And I'm going to drag that in. And you can see that it's very, very, very small. And so the easiest way to fix that is to go to, and I can never find these things on this menu here. Okay, so content wrap, that was selected for me. I didn't see it in gray. So it should be at the top. So instead of content wrap, meaning whatever size the image is going to wrap this view to that, but we don't have an image in there, so it's going to wrap it to 0, 0. So what we want to do is we want to fill the parent, and for the height, we also want to do the same. It's going to put this kind of relatively down, but I want to also have a button in here. Let's just make it a normal button, kind of centered at the top, and we're going to call that new button, that's the ID, the text, you can name it whatever you want. I'm going to call mine launch camera. Yeah, double click on it in this case just to change the ID, call it camera button. And for my image view here, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Actually, let me keep it that size. Okay, so it's just going to be half the screen. That's okay for right now. But it doesn't have an ID, so let me double click on that, give it an ID. Image ID is okay. Here you can give it a source. And the cool thing about this is if you click on this little button here, you can give it a color, which is kind of boring. You can go to the system, and if you scroll down to the drawables here, Android has a lot of built-in images and icons mostly that you can get in here. So let's actually see what we have. I think these should work. Yeah, menu view, you can see it has a little eyeball. This is a lock. So these are all images. I think you can use most of these. Some are not, some are layouts, whatever these are. Some are vectors, so they're not actually images. So those don't work. But yeah, you can go through these and So maybe if you have an Android icon that you want to do, or you can include one from your project itself. You have to include that in the drawable folder here if you want your own custom image as an image in your app. So you can make buttons as images or images as buttons, that sort of thing. So we're going to cancel that. I'm not going to include a source in there, but our ID is called image source. That's fine for our purposes. I'm going to go back to our Java code. And that should be that one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a reference to that launch button. I'm going to add a click listener so that when we click on that button, it's going to call this launch camera intent method. So let me just do that really quickly. So I don't have to, yeah, let's just do it. So I was going to say I don't have to actually put it into a variable, but let's just do it. So launch button, and I'm going to include the button class, yep, equals typecast button, find view by ID. The ID is an r.id dot, we called it camera button. Okay, so now we have a reference to that button. So on click, we set launch button dot set on click listener, new on click listener. Wait a second, populates the code for me. Now I'm going to take this, and there's a shortcut key to actually move this code up without having to copy and paste. Let me see if I can remember. Oops, that's not it. There it is. Okay, so the Option Shift key and up and down arrow will actually move that entire line there. And I could just indent that there. So instead of copying and pasting, it's just a cool little way of moving that up. So another little trick there. Actually, I need to indent that one more. Okay, so on click, it'll just launch this. It'll launch our camera activity. And so let's just go ahead and test that, make sure that's working. Okay, so now we have a button. There should be an image view somewhere here, but we can't see it. So maybe you want to put in a default image, like maybe a gray kind of silhouette, or if it's for a profile photo, sometimes they just do like a shape of a human head and the shoulders as a silhouette, that sort of thing. But letting the user know that something is going to go there. And what we're going to do is we're going to capture the image from a camera and then put that image there. So we haven't done that, but if you do click on that, you can see, there it is. Okay, great. That works. If I hit cancel, it goes away. Okay, great. So that's working. Now go back to code. Now when I take that image and I save it, I want that to give me back that information in the onActivity result. So actually I'm going to put that below our private method here. It doesn't matter where you put it, of course. Now, I don't remember what the declaration or the definition of this method should be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command N on the Mac, or I think it's Control N on Windows. This is going to give me our generator. Our generator, we can get setters and getters for our class members. We can set those individually. We can do them together. We can implement the toString, that sort of thing. I'm going to do the override methods for this class because it inherits from an activity class. And it's going to show me all of the activity class overrides that I can override. And so this one is called onActivity result. So as I type it in here, I could have just typed in result. It was a little bit faster. There it is. Hit enter. Automatically gives me all the parameters that I need, names them for me, calls my superclass, which I often forget to call. If you guys are like me, I always forget to do the superclass. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't if you don't call the superclass. But again, just rely on your tools to help you out here. Sometimes I rely on them too much, though, and I get caught. And then I'm like, oh, I don't remember how to do this without my tools. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to pass in the actually, it's not going to pass in anything. It's going to save an image in the background, but we didn't tell it to do that. So this is going to get called when that camera launches. You can just take my word for it. I'm not going to test it out here. But what we forgot to do was in our camera intent was pass it the bundle information. So camera intent dot put extra, and then we pass it a key. So this key comes from our media store. And I forget what this constant is. I can look at it, but let's go back to the notes real quick. Extra output. Okay, that's what it was. Extra. Oh, okay, that would have scrolled down. I would have saw it. Okay, so there it is, and then that's the key. And then what the value is, what you could do is you could type in, you know, if you have a system like user, local, you know, that sort of thing, or you could just put it into the temp directory. There's actually a temp directory, but that, you know, that doesn't persist. So you want to save it to the app's external storage. And again, the way that we do that, let's go back to our code. So click on the link here, and this will also be provided for you in the example code, so you can just copy it out of the example code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of this, go back to Android Studio, and in my package here, I'm going to create a new Java class. So I'm not going to create an activity, I'm just going to create a plain old Java object, or as like some people like to call a POJO. And I'm going to call this, what did I call it in the notes just to be consistent? I called it media utilities, okay? I think in my example I did camera utilities. Let's go back to Android Studio. Okay, so my class is just going to be called media utilities. And this is just a place that I'm going to store this logic that is accessible from anywhere. So media utilities, if I can spell utilities, utilities, it's just a normal class. So this doesn't, I'm going to erase that, it doesn't extend any class. And inside of that public class, I'm going to paste that in there. And I'm going to change one keyword, is the private static URI. I'm going to change that to a public static URI. And then I'm going to go ahead and you can see all of the, let me expand this so you can see the code. You can see a lot of red statements, and this is where Android Studio comes in really nicely, is if I hold down, if I hit Option Enter, it'll, oops, let me pop that thing back up. Okay, so when that blue pop-up comes up, Option Enter to import the URI library. File, it's a Java I/O package. Environment, Android OS environment. Log, Android util.log, yes. Simple format, this is a java.text. So you can see Android Studio, because it's, or Android, because it's Java, we can actually use a lot of these Java classes that you're probably familiar with. So simple date format, Java util.date. And then this one is asking me, okay, well, this is, you're asking for a date, but do you mean the util date or the SQL date? So I mean the util date. I think they're pretty much the same, but we're not doing SQL, so let's not use that. And then finally, I think that's all that we have to do. Yeah, okay. So now we've created a public, essentially a singleton or a class method here that allows us to access this file directory. You can come in here and change the My Camera app to whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. We're going to change this to BSU camera, keep it one word. Okay. And you don't have to if you don't want to change that, but I'm just going to change it just, you know.
Hours and minutes is the error down there?
Oh, spell check, probably. Yeah, it's a string, so, or, no. Okay, it's probably correcting just how you get this. This should work, so, I mean, I got it from Google, right? So I'm going to ignore that. But yeah, I mean, that's a helpful, hey, you might want to do it this slightly different way than the way I'm doing it, but that's okay for this purpose. Okay, so again, I have this media utilities and this get output media file URI, which returns a URI object, namely just a location to my directory. So go back to main activity, and this is where I'm going to put that into it. So media utilities, in my package, dot get output, and then what it's going to ask me for is a type. And the way that this is set up is it's asking for a video type or image type. The one that I want is an image type. but it's that constant is within that class. Let me go back to it just to show you what I'm talking about. So media utilities. Here are my two constants. These mean basically nothing. Like 1 and 2 don't mean anything to Android, but what we are using those as is type checks here in our if statement. So if media type, if this constant that you're passing into me is equal to this one, these could be strings, these could be 10, 11, whatever you want to choose. So it's arbitrary what value, as long as they're unique, right? So if you've never seen that before, that's a nice pattern to follow. Okay, so what is it asking me for? It's asking me for one of those constants, so I want to pass in the media image type, and that'll put in a .jpeg for where it's going to save this image at. And actually, before I do that, just to be explicit about it, I'm going to highlight it. This is better. I'm going to right click on it, go to Refactor, back up to extract, and I'm going to extract it as a variable. And it can allow it's allowing me to rename it. So if I type in here, I can rename this variable that it's going to put in there. So instead of output media file URI, I'm just going to put image file. And so as I type, it's not only changing that variable name there, but it's also changing it and as one of the parameters, the second parameter, namely. So right now it's image fill, image file URI. So again, changed it here, changed it there. I can check that box to make it a final. Yeah, maybe that's a good idea because I'm not going to alter it. And it's a little bit more optimized, I believe, when you make variables constant or finals. Okay, so I'm just going to hit enter. I think I hit enter and then backslash apparently. Okay, so hit enter. That way I can see, when I do my debugging, I can inspect that line of code to see what the image file URI is actually being passed back as. So that's, again, a nice refactor functionality in Android Studio. Okay, so what we're doing here, we're launching the intent. We're telling it where to save the file. In this case, it's just going to have a timestamp.jpg on it, or img_timestamp, like you wrote on the board there. And it's going to give that to the camera, and it's going to launch that camera. So every time I take a photo, it's going to save that file. So that's what we're going to do. And let me see here. Yeah, that's all we have to do. So launch this guy. And then the only thing I have to do after this is display the image. Okay, so here's our app, launch camera. I'll take a shot of my chest here. Okay, yeah, that looks good to me. Hit done, and there it is. Okay, so we didn't really do anything. I forgot to put a breakpoint in on that line. Oh, where's my gutter? Okay, there's my gutter. Okay, so put a breakpoint there, and instead of Control R, make sure you hit Control D or the bug. Or there's a bug in your toolbar at the top. Connection refused. Okay, that was probably because I was still running the old version. So let me go ahead and stop the running instance and hit debug. Connection refused, huh? Okay, I don't know why that was, but there it is. Okay, so now it's debugging. So if you have a breakpoint and it doesn't hit your breakpoint, it's probably because you launched it and not debugged it. Okay, so I hit the debug button, or I hit the button. My breakpoint here is stopping on this. I'm going to step through this code, so I'm going to hit this down arrow to step. Oh, yeah, not that one. This arrow here, step into. So I'm going to step into this method call. And here it is. I'm going to step into that, and you can see all these different. You can inspect this. I'm just going to run through this quickly, but you can see as I step over the timestamp what that looks like. 2016-0202 underscore, and then the time in military time or 24-hour, whatever you want to call it. And then because we passed in the media image type, it's going to select that first if statement. The media file string. If I hover over this one, it should show me. Oh, it's a local variable. Oh, well, no, here. That's weird that that's not coming up. Okay, well hopefully, let me just step over this, return that. Image file. Okay, so image file URI. If we right click on this and we go to inspect, we have a bigger window here to inspect that object. And if I scroll over, you can see file // storage emulated /0 /picture /bsu camera /image, and then our timestamp.jpg. So what our timestamp allows us to do is continuously take photos because the seconds are going to be different. If you expect the user to take photos more than 1 second, then you might want to include the milliseconds there, just so the two file names don't collide and overwrite each other. Right, the last one will overwrite the first
like
one.
a burst.
Yeah, yeah. You can put a random number in there. You know, you can create all sorts of things. But what this allows me to do again is take a photo a second and have those time stamped. So this image exists here, or actually it's going to exist in a second. We're just passing this string. It's a URI, but it's essentially a string to the camera to tell the camera where to store the image. And then let me hit, I'm just going to play through this. Go back to my code here, again, take an image, hit done, but I'm not saving that image. And so what I need to do is go back to Android Studio and get that same exact file URI. Let me just copy. Well, okay, so I've made this a local variable, but I want to keep that because I don't know what this is particularly. So I'm going to highlight that. Let's see if I can do. Well, I actually don't know how to do that off the top of my head. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to remove the decoration here. Go up to the top of my class and just declare this as a member. Yeah, not might not be initialized. That's fine. There it is. Okay, so now I have that instance here that I can use, assuming that the result code is okay. So let me check that first. So is my result code equal to result okay? Okay, and what I want to do is I want to get a bitmap image. This is just a file resource location, right? It's just this is just a reference or a string, a location to this file. So what I have to do is I'm going to create a bitmap object. And so you can see this comes out of the android.graphics package. I'm going to call this camera image, and I'm going to create a new bitmap. And I'm going to pass in, let's see, oh, I forget how to do this off the top of my head. I should have wrote down. This is why I always do the class here. Oh, okay, I didn't do that. Okay, let me go back to the example code, or the documentation. Let me see if I can remember this off the top of my head. We actually don't use a bitmap, we use a bitmap factory. Oh, I hate this little pop-up thing. Let me Google this so I can give you the actual right value of this. Sometimes it's not what you know, but how fast you can find it. I want to look at the constructors. Decode. I want to pass it a file. Okay, so file descriptor, string path name. Okay, so yeah, it's just decode file. Okay. Sorry about that. Decode. So decode file path name. So this is where I pass in the path name of the image URI. What's it complaining about? decode file, static bitmap, bitmap factory. This is the one I want to use, but oh, okay, that's why. Had a new keyword. Okay, so this one, it's complaining because it's expecting a string, and so I just have to do get. These return slightly different ones. I was going to show you the other way first, but we're running out of time, so I just want to show you the proper way of doing this. And okay, so now theoretically, I hope this works. I didn't test it before class, sorry about that. But this should work where we're getting we have the path to the file that's being created. We pass that to the bitmap factory, which is actually going to create a bitmap object to me. I'm going to store that into the camera image variable here, but then we're going to put that into our image view. So let's get a reference to our image view. I'm going to create an image view object, and we're just going to call it image view equals, and it's going to complain, so I'm going to import that image view. And just like all of our other widgets, we do find view by ID, r.id, and I believe I just call this one image view. Okay, and so now that I have the image view, I can say set image bitmap, and it accepts a bitmap object, and guess what? We can just put that in there. Okay, so
You have to put camera image in there?
do I have to what?
Camera image in there?
Oh yeah, sorry. Thank you. Wrong type. That's what I was complaining. Okay, so yes, I'm putting the camera image bitmap. It's a bitmap, get a reference to it. I was passing itself into itself. Okay, yeah, so I'm just going to run that.